All right, everyone, it's time to sound the alarm for any Americans of Indian origin or who happen to practice Hinduism. And based on the largely gated community, ignorant lily-white composition of the average federal democratic apparatus, to be clear, if you're of Bangladeshi or Pakistani origin, they'll lump you in too. So an entire group of people in the United States are about to be demoted to a Model Minority Club. Now, the Model Minority Club right now tends to be East Asian. So the mythology is that very, very racist Americans started giving a pass to Asian Americans based on their work ethic. And so Japanese people, they don't need affirmative action, or this ties into the affirmative action debate. Japanese Americans, Korean Americans, people of ancestry from Taiwan, etc., that those groups of people and others loosely associated. It's a bizarre racial system that the Democrats have concocted at this point. It resembles the Spanish system more than anything in how complex, convoluted, and fucking stupid it is. Hindutva is a term that we need to know. Now this story, I'm going to read this little tweet verbatim actually first. Activists and voters, like 10 people probably, have sounded the alarm over Aruna Miller's history of brushing shoulders with Hindu nationalist groups. Now we'll get into the different subtypes of Hindu nationalism, why this is funny, but first it's important to point out this is the lieutenant governor from Maryland. She's a Democrat. I guess she's not far left enough in other manners. So you're allowed to be a racial or ethnic nationalist if it's from a non-model minority. So black nationalism is lock, stock, and barrel. Not only is it promoted by the Democratic Party and the leftoids in general, in and out party, it's not only is it tolerated, it's promoted. It's enshrined within some of their own bills, their own statements. Maxine Waters is a black nationalist. You got Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, and others. Well, they're more grifters than anything else. That's considered fine. Hispanic nationalism is generally accepted as well, unless it's like a white Hispanic movement that doesn't hate the cops enough or something like that. Normally, until now, Indian Americans, I guess, flew under the radar. But Hindu nationalism is a rising thing in India. Now, let me explain the two different flavors of Indian nationalism, because there are two of them. The softer line Hindu nationalism that's generally being referred to is the concept that India is the one place in the world where Hinduism is the main religion and culture, because it is more than a religion for many people in India, that it should remain majority Hindu, majority Indian. It tends to be rather in opposition to the growth of Islam there, for example. Not so much other groups, Buddhists and Christians and so forth. That doesn't seem to be a particular issue. Probably because the only main religious minority within the Indian state happens to be Islam. By the way, did you know that the largest Islamic populations in the world, neither of them are in the Middle East? One is Indonesia, that's in Southeast Asia, and then in South Asia, the minority within India. The harder line is more like a reversion to the Raj period thing, before India had been partitioned. So what you now know is Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh were once one country, overseen by the British Raj. And the British had come and they had destroyed the Thuggee cult. There was a lot of ethnic conflict there. And the British came in and things did become calmer. Infrastructure begins, etc. English becomes the lingua franca of India, and still is for business purposes, although not necessarily day-to-day transactioning. So you have these two differences. Now, of course, the idea that India is going to overrun nuclear-armed Pakistan and annex it, I don't think is likely. Bangladesh would be a long shot, too. Although they do have growing diplomatic connections. You once had a corridor between India and Bangladesh that was like one side of the street was one country, the other side was another, with all sorts of little dead-end paths and shit, and they were literally in different countries, and it made no sense. They finally smoothed out the borders there generally. That was a couple of years ago, I think. The idea, though, that because a person supports the concept of a homeland for the Hindu people makes them like virulently evil or even really technically nationalistic if you're looking at the ethnic role, nation state versus ethnicity versus religion. It gets a little bit messy when you're trying to analyze things from a more Western perspective where that kind of convolution tends not to be as much of a thing. and it's a Democrat again, keeping this in mind, still getting pounded from the far left. I think I know another person that the Justice Dems are going to try to primary from the far left. That appears to be what this entails here. So beware. If you're an American and your family came over from India, however many generations a fucking go, you're too successful and you're too inclined towards views that might cause you eventually to vote for someone other than the far left, so you're being demoted. You're being demoted to the model minority club along with people of Japanese ancestry who were literally tossed in concentration camps several generations ago by our only socialist president ever. But remember, they never faced struggle. There's no. They don't need affirmative action. They don't need any programs or anything like that. We dare not talk about their variant of nationalism. If they have any such sentiments, they're evil. Not like their neighbors over there who are historically troubled people who have been enslaved and so forth. You see where this is going? It's all a bunch of horseshit to split people apart along ideology, ethnicity, religion, etc. While they preach equity, tolerance, and togetherness, the leftoids are the most bigoted people in the entire hemisphere. They're the only ones that are constantly ranting about these issues and then proposing no realistic means to address inequality where it does really exist. Their idea is, well, the government will steal more of people's money, and somehow it'll trickle down to the little people who need it. The real trickle-down economics has always been the welfare state high tax proposals of the liberals. Just to be clear, within the United States, they're the ones that invented the term to smear other people while actually promoting the basic premise. If the guys at the top, the government is much bigger than any corporation, get more of the money from everyone, it can be redistributed, it'll totally be efficient, then everyone will prosper and everything will be peachy keen. Well, I mean, after decades of those programs, it doesn't seem that things are very peachy keen for the average person. Doesn't matter if they're of Indian heritage originally or their family came over from Ireland back in the potato famine days. They're all getting hammered right now. See, we've finally achieved equality. Everyone is suffering equally. They would rather ramble about the fact that a member of their own party, this is a HuffPost posting it, so they're completely DNC controlled, is bitching about one of its own political assets based on a tangential relationship to Hindu groups that in many cases are reactive in nature, not proactive, because of Islamic violence in parts of India. You can't really blame people there for sticking together in an ethno-religious bloc when they're under constant harassment. You can't really blame them, and the Indian government is developing, but it's not strong enough yet to be able to properly police all of India and prevent ethnic and tribal and religious conflict from happening. Of course, that causes tension. In the United States, groups like the HuffPo, the far left, they try to create those tensions. Why do you think that they still throw money BLM's way? They love the riots. They love racial intolerance shown one person to another. That's about all. Peace out.